Good morning. Welcome everybody. Hey there, Mike and Joe. Good to see you this morning. And Barbara Richardson, good morning. Karen Faust, welcome this morning. It is a chilly morning out here this morning. It's in the 30s, but I'm glad that it's not raining and I get to be outside. The frosty ground is all around. It's very white. There's Wendy Chadwick, good morning. There's my mom, good morning. Jan Akins, hey, happy anniversary to you, a day late, by the way. I saw yesterday was your anniversary. Hope you enjoyed that special occasion. Lori Cares, welcome. Jim and Kathy Fuente, good morning. It's fun this morning because I often see turkey hens around on the property, but less often toms. And they're right down in this draw, right down below me, and they've been gobbling. And then there's hens kind of off on the far side of this meadow that are also yelping, and they're doing that. That's their location calls. They're trying to find each other, and they hang out. And so after being roosted up in the trees all night, in fact, they may not be down in the draw. They may be actually still roosted in the tree and gobbling from the tree. Haven't seen them yet this morning, but I enjoy those kinds of sounds. Janisa Bush, good morning. Marcy and Tim, welcome this morning. This morning, I have to say, it's probably going to be fairly brief because of the nature of my meditation this morning. I'm sorry, I don't know if you could hear those sounds, but now there were hens way back here, and now there's a hen down here that is doing quite a squawk. It's yelp. They do this location called a yelp, and then they do these squawks when they get really excited, and so there's hens right down below where the toms are right now. So they're finding each other. So anyway, I'm distracted by it. So this morning I was meditating on the glory of God. I was in Psalm 29, and let me just read parts of it. This is a Psalm of David, which says, "Ascribe to the Lord, O heavenly beings. Ascribe to the Lord glory and strength. Ascribe to the Lord glory due his name. Worship the Lord in the splendor of holiness." So this is the call for angels to do this. O heavenly beings, or in some translations, O sons of God. But it's fairly agreed upon that this is referring to angels, that David is calling to ascribe the proper recognition of who God is, his glory and his majesty. And David goes on in his words to describe God and to give the proper glory due him in the following verses. It says, "The voice of the Lord is over the waters. The God of glory thunders. The Lord over many waters. The voice of the Lord is powerful. The voice of the Lord is full of majesty." So he's meditating on the glory of God, and he is saying his voice thunders over the waters. And the waters in the Old Testament scriptures often depict or are used as a symbol of chaos. I think that is what is in mind even in the creation account in Genesis chapter 1 when, oh my goodness, I'm sorry, I'm so distracted. Now they're purring. It's another sound that hens make. And they're being so vocal this morning. Oh, I can see them on the hillside over there. So they are on the ground. The hens, those are hens over there. They're really active. And now I don't know if you can hear that. And now the toms have found them, and they're gobbling. Oh, and the hens are running toward the toms now. So maybe this is, see, what I was struggling to do is, in my devotion this morning is to ascribe proper glory and majesty to God. And oh, now there's Tom's way back here. They're all just talking. And I feel like it's times like this where I felt the language of my heart was so limited. I felt this morning. Here's David describing, Lord thunders over the waters. The waters are often, I got distracted, sorry. The waters are often a symbol of chaos. And God is the God over these things. He's his throne, he sits enthroned over the flood. And what I was going to say is that I think this is what's in mind in Genesis 1. In the creation account, the world was formless and void, and there's just all water, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the deep, over the waters. And I think that's a poetic. I think it was literally what was occurring, but in a figurative, poetic way, it was also God. It was a picture. It's a picture of God's majesty and power and authority over chaos. And so these are David's words, and he continues. The Lord, I'm going to just jump to the end of the Psalm 29. The Lord sits enthroned over the flood. The Lord sits enthroned as King forever. And may the Lord give strength to his people. May the Lord bless the people with peace. So, yeah, thank you, Carmen. Focus, boy. I think that as I sat and I described in my journaling this morning, what words would I use to ascribe to the glory of God? And the best I could do is describe him in relation to creation, the things that I can see, the things that I can understand, and that awaken in me a creative spirit. It awakens in me wonder, it broadens my perspective. I feel very small out in creation. I feel weak and vulnerable. Like, right now it's in the 30s, and I have to put all these layers on to be out here, and otherwise I wouldn't be too happy. And the nature of the mountains and so on. The picture that was brought to my attention this morning was one day in my hike on the John Muir Trail. I had already summited and crossed over Muir Pass, and I was heading toward Mather Pass. And in between those two passes is a long 16-mile canyon called LeConte Canyon, and it follows the middle fork of the Kings River. And I remember walking that canyon, and most of it is very straight. You can see all from one end to the other. Probably a 10-mile stretch you can see all the way through. It's an amazing canyon. Granite spires and walls they raise up on either side of the canyon. It's a very narrow canyon, and you're walking straight down the middle, following the middle fork of the Kings River. And I remember walking that canyon and just being in awe and feeling so small. It was one of the more picturesque, idyllic parts of my hike. You descend down into this canyon and you walk the length of it, and you have to climb what's called the Golden Staircase on the other side, and it's just straight up this rock wall where the Palisade Creek empties down into the canyon from the east side. And I remember being in that canyon just thinking about God and thinking about how amazing and majestic God is in relation to creation. These things that make me feel small, the things I'm just walking through this little canyon and feeling the majesty of God, and the reality that canyon is. I looked it up on my Google Earth this morning, in fact, as I was thinking about it, and it took me a while to find it, because even just in the state of California, LeConte Canyon, as big as it was, walking that 10-mile stretch, and how small I felt, was actually kind of hard to find on Google Earth. It took me a little while to find it because it's not very big in relation to California. California in relation to the United States. The United States in relation to North America on out, right, to the world. And here I was in this tiny little spot of my world, and I was feeling so small, and I felt God was so big and so majestic in relation to His creation. And I was dumbfounded by that. I just really enjoyed that. And my mind occasionally wanders back to that canyon when I think of the majesty of God. And so what it reminded me this morning is, as I tried to pen words, put words to how I would describe the glory of God, how I would imagine the power and authority of God. What I found was my imagination and my experience is so limited that I had a hard time putting to words, not just putting to words, but even just imagining in my mind the majesty and glory of God in relation to me, in relation to His creation. He is outside of His creation, He is above His creation. He is sustaining His creation. And I just felt like I am, my imagination of who God is so limited. It's so small. And He needs to be bigger in my mind. I think about Moses. I thought about Moses when he asked God, show me your glory. God says, nobody can see my glory and live, but I will allow you to see. I'll hide you in the cleft of a rock, and I'll pass by you, and you'll get a glimpse of it. I think about Jacob wrestling with the angel, and in the end he says, I've seen God face to face and I've lived, So he had some encounter that left him hobbled, where his hip was out of joint after that wrestling match. And I just think in some ways the more finite we feel, the greater God can be in our lives. I think that's why God allows us to not only see the majesty of creation and to say, well, He is so much bigger than that. He also allows us to experience pain and injury and wounds emotionally. Not that He wants evil to happen to us, but it's through this deconstruction of our ego, pain, and the realization of our own personal limitations deconstructs our ego, the sense that we are in control, that I'm the master of my own destiny, I can make decisions and make those things happen. Oftentimes we have this sense that we have quite a bit of control of our lives, but it's an illusion. And that illusion is broken when we experience frustrations in this world and pain and wounds. And God allows us to experience these scarring things in our life to deconstruct our ego, that we might understand Him more fully, that we might lay our lives down to Him more fully and understand His power, His strength, His majesty in a way that is so jarring to us in some ways that it equips us to live in a much deeper walk with God. And in the contrast to that, my mind wandered to Romans chapter 1 this morning. So if I'm just struggling to wrap my mind around and choose any words that reflect the majesty of God. The opposite is true when we're tempted by our own ego to think more highly of ourselves, because Romans chapter 1 talks about, it says, although they knew God, they did not glorify Him or honor Him as God. Instead, in their foolishness, their hearts were darkened, and and they exchanged the glory of an immortal God for created things, images of men, birds, animals, and creeping things. which that's what they worship, these little idols. And lest we remove ourselves too much from that picture, is like, let's just say we allow ourselves to be enamored of creation itself, created things, our own world, if you will, rather than, and we exchange that because it's something we can see, we can experience, we can manipulate, we can control at some level. We exchange that for the glory of the immortal God, something we have few words to describe, and to our wildest imaginations cannot wrap our minds around or begin to describe the majesty of God. So I'm just kind of fumbling through my words this morning in trying to offer something of value, but that's kind of where my heart is to meditate, to practice meditating on the glory of God, borrowing language from David and his limitations of how he describes the glory of God as God who is eternal, as God who the angels worship, the God who sits enthroned over chaos. And man doesn't even get into the chapter of that Psalm 29, until the very last verse. And the only acknowledgement of man is, may God give him strength and peace. How blessed it would be for us as men, these way down here in the bottom of the spectrum of things, to be blessed by God with strength and peace. This God of glory, this majestic God, the God whose voice thunders over the waters of chaos. And so that's our place, and we get to have this personal relationship with the divine, immortal, glorious God who is Lord of all. And by his choice, not by ours. By his choice, he wants to have a relationship with us. So enjoy that today. Enjoy who God is. May our minds be expanded to the majesty and glory of God, and not lose sight of that, lest we become wise in our own eyes and exchange the glory of immortal God for the things of this world. So be blessed today, and hope you're enjoying your week. Praying for you, and I will see you again tomorrow morning.